Hi, everybody. Happy New Year. Thanks for joining us this evening. I say Happy New Year. I know we are about 2 weeks into January, but this is the first time that I have been doing a virtual event in, I think, like a month now. We took a little bit of a break after Christmas, and it's been a little bit of a slow start to the year for us. But we're super excited about tonight's event with T. Jefferson Parker and Elizabeth George. But before I bring them out, I just wanted to make a couple of quick announcements and let everybody know what is going on with us at the store. So we hosted our first in-store event last week with James Rollins. Tomorrow night, we're going to have Brad Taylor in store. And then for the rest, or so far for January and February, we've got a good mix of in-store and virtual stuff. So as you were checking out the store's calendar at murderbooks.com, you'll see the events listed as either in-store or virtual. And here's my general disclaimer that if they say in-store, that is in-store as of the moment. As you guys know, things can change pretty quickly. So as I mentioned, we'll have Brad Taylor tomorrow night in store. Next Wednesday, we're going to be chatting with Lisa Gardner and Mary Kubica virtually. And then next Thursday, Nick Petrie is going to be in the store. And next Friday, Ace Atkins will be in the store too. Also wanted to mention before we get started tonight that we do have signed book plates to go with Elizabeth and Jeff's books. So if you order either of their new releases from us, we will get signed book plates for you. And if you have not checked out the YouTube channel, make sure you check out the Murder by the Book YouTube channel. We've done hundreds of virtual events in the last couple of years, and all of those author talks are there. While Jeff and Elizabeth are chatting this evening, if you have questions for either of them about this new book, their previous books, writing process, any of that stuff, please post those in the live chat on YouTube or the comments on Facebook, and we will leave some time at the end to get to questions. But I'm going to get us officially started tonight. Let me bring T. Jefferson Parker out. How are you tonight, sir?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking.
It's good to see you.
Back at you.
So Jeff's new book is 1,000 Steps, which just came out on Tuesday. Officially, T. Jefferson Parker is the author of numerous novels and short stories, the winner of 3 Edgar Awards for Silent Joe, California Girl, and the short story Skinhead Central, and the recipient of a Los Angeles Times book prize for mystery for Silent Joe. Before becoming a full-time novelist, he was an award-winning reporter, and he lives in Fallbrook, California. We're also excited to have Elizabeth George joining us tonight. How are you, Elizabeth?
I'm fine. Very good. Nice to be here. Or sort of like to be at my house, but nice to see you.
So Elizabeth's newest book, Something to Hide, is the newest in the Lindley series. It also just came out on Tuesday. And Elizabeth George is the New York Times bestselling author of 21 psychological suspense novels, 4 young adult novels, 2 books of nonfiction, and 2 short story collections. Her work has been honored with the Anthony and Agatha Awards, 2 Edgar nominations, and both France and Germany's first prize for crime fiction. She lives in Washington State. So as I mentioned, we have signed book plates for both authors' books. And if you guys have questions for either of them tonight while they are chatting, please post those in the comments. And if you have not ordered books yet, I will drop links in the comments so you'll be able to pre-order or to order those from the Murder by the Book website. But for now, I'm going to turn this over to Jeff and Elizabeth to get started, and I will see you guys in just a little bit.
Okay, Jeff.
All right, there goes the captain. Now the crew's on its own.
I thought it might be interesting for us to sort of do a little history of our friendship. I realized today that I have known you for almost 40 years, which is just it's been a pleasure. But it's sort of horrifying when I realize sort of how long we have been around. And I just wanted to, I thought it'd be sort of fun to explain how we first met. Do you remember how we first met?
No, tell me the story. I know it was 1984.
1984.
Maybe that's why I can't remember it.
Well, I can't even remember what I did yesterday, but my long-term memory is pretty good. So what had happened is this was not too, when was Laguna Heat published?
85.
Oh, okay. So maybe we met in 86. Why do I think it's 8? I think, okay. All right. So when it must have been 86. So we're not as old as we thought we were. Because I remember Laguna Heat had been published, and we had a mutual friend in Steve Mitchell, who makes an appearance in your current novel.
Mhm.
And you worked for Steve, I believe, in one of the local newspapers.
Mhm.
So Steve, I had written my second, I think my second book at that point, and or it could have been, yeah, it was my second book. And the first book was a disaster. It wasn't published and shouldn't have been published, and will be published over my dead body if anybody could ever find the manuscript. But I wanted an opinion from a professional writer, and I was interested in what you had to say, and if you thought your literary agent might be interested in my book. And so he got us in contact with each other, and I drove down to Laguna Beach, where you lived, in that, I think you lived on, was it 3rd Street, in that
Yeah.
gray building apartments?
Yes. Yes.
And so I brought you the manuscript, and it's really funny. You proceeded to drive around with it in your trunk for a whole bunch of time, and I finally thought, well, gosh, maybe he's had a chance to read it by now. And you hadn't read it, but you said, oh, I'll send it to my literary agent. And so I think you probably wrote a nice letter. This is a writer from Southern California, blah blah blah. Well, she rejected the book, and then when I told you she rejected the book, you said, don't worry about it. She didn't like my book very much either.
That's funny. That's true. That was her.
Anyway, so when my very first book got published, so that was my third attempt at a crime novel. When that got published, the only place that asked me to do anything was that bookstore in Venice Beach. I can't remember if it's probably not there any longer, but I knew nobody would come to this event, because who was I? Why did they want me to do a book signing? So I don't remember this. I said, I will only come if you also invite T. Jefferson Parker, because your second book was just out.
That's right.
And so that started this sort of a semi-tradition of our doing book signings together, so that if nobody showed up, we could blame the other person, and we didn't have to take the full fall for what had occurred. Anyway,
How'd it go that night? How'd it go that night? How'd it go that night in Venice?
I think we had maybe 10 people.
10.
Okay.
All right.
So I mean, that's pretty.
It's a start.
It's a start, yeah, really. Anyway.
That's good.
So okay, so
I remember, I remember most of that. I do remember that. I don't remember not having the manuscript in the trunk of my car for so long, but that sounds like something I would do. I remember you CC'd me on an email once. I think it was you back in the time shortly after we had just met, and you were writing, I think, to either Steve Mitchell, our mutual friend, or maybe it was his wife, Marilyn. I can't remember, but somehow it came up, and I think you said it was, oh yeah, it's been really nice, getting to know Jeff Parker a little bit. He's a great guy, and he's got such terrific manners. And I just thought that was so cool to be called out for my manners,
and you have indeed always had terrific manners.
Well, I don't know. It's kind of you to say, but when I think back on our just moving forward in time a little bit from then, I think back to our many discussions about literature and music. And I remember particularly one day driving around Laguna Beach in my red convertible Mustang, and we were playing music. You brought some I think there were tapes back then even, and I had some that I liked, and we had this sort of long running genteel feud about who was better, Sting or the guy who sings for the Eagles, the guy I mean.
Oh yeah, I do know who you mean. Yeah.
End of the end. Don Henley.
Yeah, okay.
We talked about that, and I remember you pulled for Sting, I pulled for Don Henley, and so we've always had a good good relationship, and that we can disagree in decent good humor and respect the other person's point of view, and I like that a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Well,
valuable. I hadn't done the math. I didn't realize it was, but it's almost 40
yeah,
years ago. If it was 86, say, so that's, yeah, 26,
yeah.
yeah, 36 years ago. Yeah, incredible, incredible.
Yeah, it's sort of amazing when I think about how long, first of all, not only how long I've known you, but how long a career that we both have had, um, doing the same thing but from different perspectives. Writing crime novels, but very different kinds of crime novels.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I think that would be sort of a cool thing to talk about first, is the whole idea of what led you to the kind of books that you write and what led to the kind of books that I write. So you want
Yeah,
to start?
yeah, yeah. Let me ask of you a question first, though, that predates that just a bit, that I want to know, and I think the audience would like to know, and that is, can you trace your interest and development in wanting to write from, from diapers forward?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it wasn't too long after diapers, well, a few years, but I started writing when I was 7 years old.
Really?
And this came from this came out of the fact that I love to read, and that my dad used to take me and my brother to the library in Mountain View,
Mhm.
California, where I grew up. And the old library was in a storefront. It was one of those wooden floors, hardwood, old beaten up hardwood floors. In those days, Mountain View was sort of on the edge of the farming area in San Jose, so
Mhm.
it wasn't what it anywhere near what it is today. But my brother and I would go down there, and we would just get a pile of children's books each, and we were both huge readers. And I would take those books home, and we would both start reading in the car on the way home.
Mm.
And I was really aware of how much I loved doing that, loved reading. And I started thinking in terms of, oh, maybe I could do this too. I probably assumed that the book had been written by another 7-year-old or something. But anyway, that was really what started it. And I started writing very, very soon after that. I had a lot of support from my parents, because they probably just thought it was really charming, and so they gave me the things that I needed to write. So by the time I was, oh, I don't know, maybe sixth grade or so, my mother had passed along to me her 1929 typewriter that had been through a flood,
Mm.
and worked about as well as you can imagine a typewriter would work that had been through a flood. But anyway, I used that for years to type my little stories on, and essentially kept writing all through elementary school, through high school, and then I took a rather long hiatus because when I was in college, and then when I became a teacher. So that was a considerable hiatus before I got back to it. But so, what was your trajectory?
Well,
Where did you
similar
come from on
similar
this?
to yours. But rather than being drawn into writing by reading, I was actually drawn into writing by being read to. When I was
Hmm.
real little, I remember sitting on mom's lap in our little suburban living room in Tustin. I would have been, I don't know, 4, 3, well, I can't remember 3, but 4 I can remember, pre-kindergarten by a whole year. And I remember sitting on her lap on the white Naugahyde, sofa in our living room with the orange carpet, and and listening to mom read to me. And she read. It was animal stories that really turned me on. I was all about Vulcan the condor, and Perry the squirrel, and Bambi, and my favorite was Shag, last of the plains buffalo. And of course, they're all
Hmm.
illustrated, and
Yeah.
the writing's good and clear and clean, and mom's voice. Mom is a good reader. And so I kind of grew up with that, and I had story appreciation of story in me at a really before I could even read, I think. And then
Hmm.
during school and stuff, I was an okay reader, avid, not avid though. I wasn't like you. I was just kind of an average reader kid. And mom and dad would take us to the libraries for sure. And I remember liking stories and enjoying the literature classes that I had. And then the lightning bolt kind of struck me in high school. I was a sophomore, and I took a Miss Page's philosophy mythology and folklore class, and I took mythology and folklore because I thought it would be easy. I had no interest at all in mythology or folklore, and so I took the class, and it was just bonehead English. It was just me and a bunch of other guys like me. You know, we were not the gifted ones. And halfway through the semester, we came into class, and Miss Page looked really sour, and she said, "You know, I don't like this class. And I think sometimes that you're just incapable of learning. So what I'm going to do today is I'm not going to try to teach you anything. I'm going to have you come up to my desk, and there's a big pasteboard box of books here. And I brought my old paperbacks from the garage, and you have to close your eyes and in silence pick one and take it back to your desk, or I'm going to send you to the assistant principal." And I've been to that guy before. You don't want any part of that paddle, that oar with the holes in it. And so anyway, I got up to there and closed my eyes and reached into the box, and I pulled out this tattered copy of a book called Catch-22 by Joseph Heller. You know, and I thought, oh, you know, this can't be as good as Shag, Last of the Plains Buffalo, but I'm just going to try, you know. So I took it back to my desk, and I read it for the 45 minutes. And then we all got to take them home, and I read at home for 2 weeks. I'm a slow reader, and I read every word of that book. And when I was done, I thought it was so delightful and so subversive and so much just better than anything I'd ever read. I remember thinking this, you know, if you were a writer someday and you could give your readers one millionth of the pleasure that you got from that book over the last 2 weeks, you would have to consider yourself a success. And so I think in some weird sort of way, I'm still kind of trying to live up to that. So that was my trajectory. You know, by the time I was halfway through college, I decided I was going to write a book as soon as I got out of college. And I did, and it was no good. And it's in a drawer, just like your first one, you know, and I don't even know where it is, to tell you the truth. And so I wrote another one and another one, and was on my way. So really.
In the list of the books that you wrote, where did Laguna Heat fall? Was that pretty early on?
Yeah, it was early on. That was the second book that I wrote. The first one I wrote, and I recognized that it wasn't good enough for anybody's eyes but mine, you know. So I just kind of ditched it, and then I determined, you know, doggedly determined to write another one, and I got some advice way back then. I sent an editor at Delacorte my first book, the unpublished one, and it was not even a mystery. It was a kind of a Bildungsroman about a young man whose father has absconded with the company fortune and sort of left the family and blah blah blah. And I sent that manuscript to Morgan Entricken, who was a young guy who's my age. I met him at a college party a few years earlier, and he wrote back. He said, "I read the book. You know, I can't publish it. Nobody in New York will publish it. Nobody's interested in a young surfer who lives in Newport Beach," which is what my guy was. He said, "But you have some talent, and you have market determination, because most writers who sit down to write their first book never finish it, you know." So she said, "Write something more commercial. Go to the New York Times bestseller list, read the little bullet synopses of the bestsellers, and see what people are buying, and write something like that, you know." And so I wrote Laguna Heat, and that took many years. I could tell that story at some point if we get around to it. But so that second book, Laguna Heat, was that second book, and that book set me on my way. It was really well published. It had a good cover, a really enthused publisher, a really great editor, and that launched my career from 0 to 60, if you will, in one book.
And an excellent book too. I read that many years ago. Indeed, not maybe a couple of years ago. I don't know where I was, but I found a first edition of it, and I snapped it up to add to my library, because that's probably a rare find. And all I had before that is the paperback. Yeah. You know, so do you want to talk at all about the idea of place in novels? And the reason I bring that up is that in your current novel, you've done something really challenging, and that is that you've chosen to depict Laguna Beach, California in 1968, at the sort of like the year after the Summer of Love.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I'd be really interested to know, well, first of all, what year did you actually move to Laguna yourself?
Oh, I didn't move to Laguna until I was 25 years old or so. But I discovered Laguna as a wide-eyed 14-year-old, scurrying over the hill from Tustin and spending my summer days in Laguna Beach with my buddies. Mom and dad and my friends' parents would drive us into Laguna in the morning, and we'd go and drop us off, and we'd go body surfing, and we'd go to the Sound Spectrum to look for records, and we would go to the Del Taco for lunch and all that stuff, and then they'd pick us up at 5 at the library, and we'd and drive us home. So my introduction to Laguna Beach was 1968, and I was 14 years old, and I was bedazzled by that place. You can imagine what Laguna was like in 1968 to a 14-year-old kid. There were hippies everywhere. First of all, I mean, the city's a beautiful, incredibly beautiful architecturally and natural history place. I mean, it's gorgeous. The beaches and the homes and the trees and everything are really kind of smashing. And then graft onto that this invasion of hippies who all came south after the summer of love in San Francisco. They picked Laguna next, and they're all dressed in tie-dye, and they're all really hairy, and they all have bags, and they're playing hacky sack, and everywhere you go smells like marijuana smoke, and there's drug deals going down left and right, and there's all these crazy locals on top of it. Then on top of that, there's the cops chasing around the hippies who are hiding joints and stuff, and demonstrators against the war, and protesters and all, and then at night when you return to humble Tustin, where you're trying to do your junior high school homework, you're watching Cronkite on TV. They're loading body bags off the Air Force base in Maryland and stuff. So that was one crazy time to my eyes, and I was just young enough and sentient enough and curious enough to be immersed in that for no good reason. I had no idea I was ever going to write anything, but I was looking at it, I think, as a writer might. I was salting away all sorts of memories and things. And when I dug up those days, those hours, 52 years later, in 2020, at the beginning of the lockdown, and I decided, I'm going with it. I'm going to let those memories come back, and I'm going to dive back into that time, and I'm just gonna go back to a really intense moment in our history and in my history, and I'm going to ditch COVID, and that's what I did.
Huh.
How about you? Tell me about start a discussion about place and what it means to you, and you have written about some interesting places and that I'll never see.
Well, the place has always been really, really important to me. No matter whether I'm writing a book or whether I'm reading a book, I really love books that can bring place to life, which is one of the things that I admired about your current book, because I moved to Southern California, and specifically to the beach areas, Huntington Beach, probably, I think it was maybe 1972. So I was familiar with Laguna at just a few years later from the period of time that you are writing about, and so in my own writing, I have always tried to make the place real for the reader, so as to give the reader the same experience that I have when I read a book that has a really good sense of place. I don't know about you, but I have been to so many different places in the world because I read about them in a book, and the writer was able to make it so real that I thought, I got to go there, and went there to see the place that this person had written about. And that is the kind of thing that I've always tried to do for my readers. What, in your books, what I've always admired is the fact that you can make Southern California so intriguing a place, and so vibrantly alive. Even if you're writing about a place that has, nothing but mini malls and eucalyptus trees, and yet still it becomes a very, very real part of the story, almost as if it were another character. I think for me, in a crime novel, that's crucial to so that it is set firmly in a location that the reader can picture and can live in. So in my new book, Something to Hide, I made the decision to have the book take place in London, and but I didn't want it to take place in the part of London that people were familiar with,
Mhm.
nor did I want it to take place, in the neighborhoods in which my characters live. Although the reader goes there in different scenes, but not for the main part of the story.
Mhm.
And I chose Northeast London, in particular in the borough of Hackney, to set the story. And so going there was really so when I went there, I did what I always do, which is that I take photographs and take notes and try to develop for myself a way to bring this place to life, through details, telling details. But that was and that's always a big part of the story for me, to allow the reader to see something that they haven't seen before, in a particular place that I'm writing about. So many people that read my books have been to London, and how do I make the London that I'm going to write about different from the
Yeah.
London that the people maybe have seen, or maybe
Hackney
have
is
seen on
wonderful.
television.
Hackney is wonderful in your new book. I think it's beautifully done. It's immersive. For me, and probably for a lot of readers, it's brand new. I didn't know anything about that. About that part of London, and yet I'm right in the middle of it, and one of the things I really like about it is London during a heat wave. I mean, it's just so antithetical. You don't generally think of London being this streaming hot place, screaming hot place, but it is. They're in the middle of a heat wave, and everybody's complaining about it, stuff, and the air conditioners aren't strong enough, and all that good stuff. And anyway, you nailed that. But in a general sense, or a longer sense, why England? What led you there, and what married you to that land so steadfastly?
Well, I've always loved England, and that love of England started a long time ago, probably with the advent of the Beatles, that's when I probably first got interested in 1963 when they came to the United States.
I was going to ask you about that. Cool.
Yeah, and in addition to that, a girl that I had. Well, I went to a school called St. Joseph's Grammar School in Mountain View, and in my eighth grade year, a girl joined our class who was from Manchester, England,
Hmm.
and she'd been adopted by a local family. And she and I became pretty good friends, and it was just fascinating to me to talk to her and to learn about life in England and to learn the language, because they use words that are familiar to us, but they have totally different meanings. Like
Mhm.
pinch, which
Mhm.
which doesn't mean what we think of as pinch. And I remember when she first said that. And it was just so much fun to learn that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Then when I got to high school, very, very quickly in my English classes, I discovered a love for Shakespeare right from the very beginning. Loved
Mhm.
Shakespeare like day one, as soon as they passed out The Merchant of Venice, and we started reading it. I really, really liked Shakespeare, and then just sort of broadened out to other English writers. So it was sort of natural for me to have this feeling for England that I really never had for any other place, including the places that I've lived. Because for me, I always have this sense of coming home when I go to England. That this is not necessarily where I belong, but this is where I feel the most myself.
Yeah. I know you
Yeah.
have some Italian blood. Do you have English blood? You must.
I do, yeah, yeah. The major part of my blood is Italian. My mom was
Mhm.
Italian, but
Yeah.
my dad was sort of a mixture of all of all the countries in the UK.
Everything else.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so really Welsh, English, and Irish.
Cool.
Uh, and so yeah, so I have that as well, and maybe that has something to do with the affinity. But it's such a cool place because they have so many really interesting traditions and ceremonies and pageantry and things that
Mhm.
we don't really have here in the United States, not the way they do. And that adds, for me, that adds to the intrigue. It adds to the
Yeah.
excitement of the place.
Yeah. Well, your books are full of those those things very English, starting with the language itself, and your expository, narration is kind of it could be called, high English or a high English, but the dialogue is much quirkier. It's the way they talk, and the words that they
Yeah.
use, and the word order and things, and the way they just kind of flip off these phrases and these comments. It's just endearing, and it's really fun to read, and it makes the dialogue so bright. So I thought that this book was your new book, Something to Hide was just extra good that way. I like the way the people in northeast, I guess, is that where Hackney?
Yeah.
I love the way they talk, and I think you did a great job with the way you drop the vowels, often in that sort of vernacular talk that these people have. It really it's got a neat rhythm, and it sounds really good, and it's fun to listen to. So yeah, good work on that. When did you first set foot in England?
And I went over to study Shakespeare with a class of with a group of students that were not only from our high school, which was Holy Cross High School, but also from Utah, a group of Mormon students. And we got together. There were 65 of us, and we went to England. Well, first we went to France for about a week, and then we went over to England and to study Shakespeare. And they did something that this was the first time my school had done this, and I don't think they ever did it again. In that they parked us in London, and essentially we had the run of the city.
Oh gosh!
So once our classes were done for the day, I mean, we just had one class a day, and the rest of the time we could just run around London.
And what year was this, Elizabeth?
This was 66.
66.
It was before they changed the money. So you had to master pounds, pence, shillings, half crowns, all of the different things. And I loved that money system. It was so fascinating to me. But the downside of it is that within a couple of days of being there, you'd be walking around with about 5 pounds of coins. Because that's what they had. They had. I mean, they had paper money too, but the majority of it was done in coin. And they had these pennies that were yay big. I mean, the penny was huge. And, get about 5 of those in your change purse, and you're in big trouble. So we did that, and we rode the underground, and we did all kinds of things. Like, I'm sure they would never allow us to do. Would never have allowed us to if they knew we were really going to take that many liberties. And the only place that we weren't supposed to go was Soho. And then and I ended up going out on a double date with a friend of mine who was pen pals with a young man in London. And so first place they took us to was Soho, and we went to a nightclub, and it was just really great. And then on the way back when they were taking us home, they stopped for fish and chips. And that was, I've never had fish and chips before, and it was not, that's when they just served. Well, they didn't serve it in newspapers then, because I had always served it in newspapers before, but they did just throw it into like a paper lunch sack, and you just sort of dug in to the lunch sack for your fish and chips. So it was just a delightful experience. So I'm so glad I was able to do that. It was fabulous.
So if you weren't in love with England before, you were in love with England when you came back, for sure.
Oh yeah, and that was that was when the mini skirt was just coming out. Carnaby Street was really Carnaby Street, not what it is today. Today it's more like a tourist trap, but then it was really a center of fashion. And I remember being on Carnaby Street and seeing all these really cool clothes that people were wearing. Yeah. It was really neat. I really loved it. It was a terrific period.
In London must have been just terrific.
Yeah,
that's neat.
One of the things I was thinking about in our books, Jeff, is the fact that we are both central to your book. The main character is he 16? Is Matt 16?
Yeah, he is. He's 16.
Yeah. So your central character is a 16-year-old boy who is searching for his sister who's been kidnapped, and one of my main characters is an 18-year-old boy who has a dawning knowledge that his 8-year-old sister is in extreme danger.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that it was sort of interesting to have these situations where we're both writing about teenage boys. And what I would love for you to sort of explain is how you developed this character, and how much of that character is you and how much of that character is your brother, because I know your brother's name is Matt, and so I recognized your use of the name. Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, I'll try. Creating a character is always kind of a mystery. I think to a lot of writers. To me, it is, especially your protagonist. But I wanted to write a story, a coming of age story, a story about a boy becoming a young man, and that's a tall order in 350, 400 pages. But
Yeah.
I wanted to try it because I've read recently a few coming of age Bildungsromans that have just been wonderful. So I wanted to try that, and I'm qualified to write a 16-year-old boy as well as anybody else. I didn't have to do anything, dramatic to sort of put myself there in a way. And so I cobbled together Matt Anthony, the character in the book, by giving him attributes that I think are interesting and that I understand and that I think a 16-year-old boy living in that time, in that place would have. My own brother, Matt Parker, is a really successful and really good painter, fine artist now. He was like Matt Anthony when he was 16. He was a frustrated art student who always had a sketchbook in his hand and could never get the sketches to look right, and he'd get mad and tear them out and start another one and all. So I called on my brother's educating of me as an artist for what I know about Matt in the book. I also tried to give Matt kind of representative interests of a 16-year-old boyhood in Southern California. He likes, for instance, he likes to fish. He surfs a little. He likes he likes the beach. He likes being outside and all. So he's kind of a simple guy in a way. And when the story opens, I see Matt as kind of a he's a deferential, fairly polite, yes sir kind of kid. He's observant, but he's very to himself. And during the course of the book, then he changes, and we see him begin to get harder and get more willing to stand up for himself and what he thinks is right, as he's being tempted by some pretty persuasive people to do some pretty not cool things. Both the cops and the drug brotherhood are after Matt, and to do favors for them and stuff. And while Matt is getting tougher and moving through the novel towards knowledge of discovering what has happened to his beloved sister, he finishes the book well on his way to being a capable, think for yourself person. And I think the biggest lesson that he learns throughout this growing summer, if you will, is how to say no to bad people and bad ideas. Concomitantly, one of the things that I really wanted to do and show and really had fun writing was I tried to give him the physical manifestations of change. So at the beginning, he's complaining about having sore knees and elbows and his joints always ache and stuff. And the doctor told him that it's just growing pains, Matt. Everybody goes through it. And about halfway through the book, 2/3 of the way through the book, he says, "What? I wonder if they are growing pains." And he gets on the scale. He hasn't weighed himself ever, and or recently, and he's gained something like, I forget what it is. He's gained 20 pounds in the last couple of months, and then he measures himself on the wall where him and his brother, measure themselves and put a little pencil hash mark, and he's grown 2 inches in about the same amount of time, and all of his clothes are too small, and nothing fits, and he has to go to the thrift store and buy all these clothes that barely fit better. Some of them are just too big. So I gave him the physical correlation of growing older too, and I tried to make that feeling palpable. I remember it myself. And the third thing that I really kind of wanted to do with Matt was I wanted to write a protagonist, a kid who was one step away from being homeless and one step away from diving into dumpsters to get food, because his family has fallen apart. His mom is not stocking the pantry. She's got some real problems, or real drug problems. His deadbeat dad is in Texas. His brother's fighting in Vietnam, and Matt is got a paper route trying to make money. He makes $12.50 every 2 weeks or something like that, and he's always hungry. He's growing. There's never enough food, and I wanted to show. By the middle of the book, the end of the 2/3 of the way through the book, Matt he's literally homeless. He's living out of his mother's hippie van, and he's trying to run away from the cops who are trying to get him to snitch on the Brotherhood. So all of that stuff kind of went in, and again, Laguna was so vivid to me back then as a 14-year-old. I didn't have any trouble remembering the sounds and the scenes, and so I either saw or imagined or did a lot of the things in Laguna in my life that Matt does. I didn't have to really. It was like remembering more than inventing. And so that's kind of a complex, rambling answer to your question, but that's what I was trying to do with a 16-year-old. Now your guy's 18. His feet are on the ground. He's confronted with one terrible conundrum. I don't know how he's going to finally get out of it, but he's a capable guy, and is he born in London, or did he come over?
No, he was born in Nigeria, and he came to London with his mother to join his father. I think it's when he's 2 years old. So he's basically grown up in London, but in a very traditional family. So and the fact that he's born in Nigeria is one of the ways that his mother is able to trick his little sister into believing that there is this big initiation that she has to go through if she wants to be truly a member of the tribe from which her family comes, and that's Yoruba. And so he when the book starts, I mean, it starts pretty much in their family with a bang, because his father, who is a very controlling individual, makes an announcement that he's got it all set up, and the family doesn't have any idea, what on earth he's talking about. And in short order, he reveals that he has arranged a marriage for the son, and the son's name is Tani, and he's arranged a marriage for him. He has found a 17-year-old virgin in Nigeria, and he has paid a significant bride price for her, which is traditional. The bride, of course, doesn't get to keep the money, but her father gets the money. And the father of the bride is the one who determines what the bride price is going to be. But because he's had to pay so much money, he has to come up with a way to recoup that money. And then the story heads off in that direction as well. But once the young man, Tani, learns that his father has done this, and oh, by the way, we're going to be going to Nigeria, so you're going to meet her, and then we'll have the formal engagement, and then you'll get married. And once you've got a couple of kids, then you can come back to London. And the problem, of course, is that Tani has a girlfriend already, unbeknownst to his father. Although the girl is black, she is not Nigerian black. She is English black. And that doesn't count for much with the father when it comes to his Nigerian children. Of course, he's a flaming hypocrite, as you discover as you're reading.
And worse.
So Tani is faced with dealing with that. And then at the same time, he is experiencing a dawning knowledge of what's actually going on between his mother and his little sister. And he, doesn't know what to make of it at first, but especially when she's talking about being initiated. And he knows there's no initiation. And it goes from there once he realizes what the initiation entails, mostly from his girlfriend, because she's very quickly able to put the pieces together because she's, certainly had education on the topic.
Yeah, she's bright. She's bright.
Yeah.
Was it particularly hard for you to get the goods and create Tawny, believably and as well as you did? Was that a tough one, or was that your great imagination just doing its job?
Yeah, well, I think that I always create my characters in advance. So I had created him in advance. And what? This is sort of funny when I think about this as a writer. So it never occurs to me that I might not be able to do something,
Well,
So
that's a good thing.
Yeah, this kid's going to be 18 years old, and it's going to be a Nigerian family in London. No problem, I can handle that.
Good.
So
Yeah.
so I created him the way I always create characters. The big decision for me, because of the kinds of books I write, are because I do multiple viewpoint. You do usually a single viewpoint in your novels, but I do multiple viewpoints. And then the big thing is, okay, so of all of these characters that I just created, who will be the viewpoint characters? And so my decision was to make Tawny one of the viewpoint characters, so that the knowledge of what's actually going on in the family it can dawn on him, and he can also discover things that are being hidden from him. So he's the vehicle for that. So I made him the vehicle for the discovery of these things that are being hidden from him.
He's a perfect choice. I mean, he's part of the family, and what he sees happening in front of him, you see as the reader happening in front of you, and you get to experience that journey right by his side. It was perfect choice, I think. You couldn't you wouldn't have wanted to try to give it that point of view to the 8-year-old, or you couldn't give it to mom or dad, because they're just you can't learn the truth from people like that. So
yeah, and yeah, certainly, yeah. So it's really it's kind of about his journey to understanding, his and understanding not only what's happening to his sister, but his journey to understanding what the bigger picture is, and how he's now going to navigate his life once he has discovered what the bigger picture is. What are the decisions that he's going to make, and how is he going to deal with a break with his family, which he desperately needs to affect in one way or another. And in that, he's helped by his English girlfriend, and her family, and sort of it goes from there. But it was it was a real interesting character for me to create. I always feel that my characters are real people, that they've lived before the book begins, and they will continue to live after the book ends. And that's sort of the feeling I try to give my readers. And do you do that same thing? Do you have that sense that, okay, so Matt has had his journey in this book, and he's going to continue on after this book? Do you experience that, or is it like, okay, he's done?
I assume that he's going to live on, and Julia's mom, and his dad and brother, whoever's still standing at the end of the book, I assume that I kind of try to treat them like or create the illusion for the reader that they are whole living people before the story starts and will continue afterwards. As an author, as a creator of the next book, I'm much more able and willing and generally happy to say goodbye to the characters that I have written in most of my novels. Not all. I've written some series, but most are standalones, and I look forward to letting them kind of live their lives without my help, and then I can go on and do something else. Invent another character that I might be interested in. I have to say that in 1,000 Steps, Matt was really fun to create, and I had a blast. And the first thing I thought when I finished that book was oh boy, I got to pick Matt up 2 years from now or 5 years from now, and now he's an artist at UCI or whatever. Yeah, I got to continue this guy because it was so much fun to write. And I thought, nah, let's not. Let Matt do what Matt wants to do, and he doesn't need me holding his hand anymore. And so I started I've already started another book for next year that has nothing to do with Mad Anthony or 1968.
When you are going to start a book, what is your starting point, aside from the fact I remember you saying one time, I have mouths to feed, and that was that was part of your starting point. But can you explain what your starting point is, and then I'll sort of see how mine compares to that?
Yeah, happy to. Starting point. Well, I'm a sucker. I'm a complete sucker for inspiration, and I'll look for it anywhere and wait for it and do everything I can do to jumpstart inspiration, whatever that might be. Doing things you like, I think, and in this case, in the case of 1,000 Steps, I had come to the end of my fourth Roland Ford novel. It was a series of novels that I wrote about a PI living here in Fallbrook, where I live, and San Diego area, and he gets involved in all the various problems of the world because he's a PI and people hire him to do things, usually to find people. And I came to the end of that book and I liked it, and it was done, and it was time to start. It was time to write another book because I have mouths to feed, and because that's what I do. It's the only thing I'm really good at, and I'm happy when I'm writing. And so I don't mind working hard, and it was time to start cobbling together another book. And about the time that I realized it was time to start another book, these floods of memories from 68 in Laguna Beach were knocking on my door really loud, and they were presenting themselves in my dreams and in my waking hours vividly, and I was reading here and reading there, looking up 1968 a bit, and it just all kind of came back so real to me and so urgently that as I started thinking about a book, I wanted to write a coming of age thriller, if you will, coming of age mystery. I was really leaning towards Laguna Beach in 1968, and I was thinking that it would be really delightful to write an entire novel in the present tense. I've never done that before, and all of those things just kind of lit a fire under me. And when I thought of the title 1,000 Steps, which is based on 1,000 Steps Beach in Laguna Beach, it's a well-known beach and beautiful beach, and it has echoes and meanings in the book beyond just the 1,000 Steps Beach. But anyway. When I thought of that title and put it together with what I was feeling about my own past, 52 years ago, I just took Roland aside and I said, look, I can't do it. I'm writing 1,000 Steps is making me put you down and write it. So 1,000 Steps told me in no uncertain terms, you're writing me, you're not writing Roland. Have fun. And that's what I did. And when I sold that book to Tor, they wanted two. They wanted a 2-book deal. They gave me a 2-book offer. And so I am now writing a book for next year, which has nothing to do with Roland and nothing to do with Matt. And that's just kind of the way that I like to face that. I'll take inspiration anywhere I can find it. And I found it everywhere from 7-Elevens to 68 in Laguna. How about you?
Well, I just need to ask you one question, if I may. So you've actually started the next book. Is that what you said?
Correct. Yeah.
So where did that idea come from for the next book?
You really want to know?
Yeah.
Well, my wife and I lost a beautiful, valuable Labrador Retriever, our family pet, 3 years ago, and we didn't have the courage to get another dog for a long time. And it just dawned on us one morning about 1.5 years ago, a little over a year ago, that we needed another dog. And I got it in my head that we needed a terrier because I wanted a little dog that could scramble around in the front part of my yard and help me catch gophers and ground squirrels and stuff like that. And so Rita says, well, yeah, that's great, but I think I wanted a rat terrier. They're really, really cool dogs. And she goes, nah, we want some sort of a rescue terrier because everybody's got to be rescued, right? And okay, I'm down for that. So we go online and we look at the Fallbrook Animal Shelter, Fallbrook Animal Sanctuary website, and sure enough, they've got what they're billing as a terrier mix. And so he's really cute in the picture, and we go down and we meet Rhett. His name is Rhett, and he's 6 months old. He's a dinky little thing, really cute. And And so we pet him and talk to him and stuff. And they show us a video. You're going to love this. They show us a video of Rhett 2 months prior, say at age 4 months, being lifted off a gravel street in Tijuana by a rescue woman and who brought him to Fallbrook. She rescued him literally off the street in Tijuana, and he's trembling and he's really skinny and he's got ticks around his eyes and he's just a mess of a dog, and he had every disease you can imagine. And but they took him in, they fixed him up, and we rescued him. We took him home. And so then I just got to thinking, what would happen if a person were to rescue a dog who has a past completely different than what you think that dog has. So my new book, in a nutshell, the one I'm working on, is about a young American reporter who rescues a wounded by gunshot dog from an animal clinic in Tijuana, who turns out to have a past that is nothing like what they believe.
That sounds really intriguing. That sounds really good. And
I
of course,
thought
I'm a
you're
huge
a dog person.
I'm a huge dog lover. So, oh my God, that's well, I can see how that happened and
Yeah.
how that came about.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Where are
Yeah,
you in your book?
Oh,
Where are
you
you in
there?
your book?
I see John.
Yeah, so Jeff actually just asked the question, one of the questions I was popping in to ask. So Elizabeth, what are you working on next?
Oh, okay. What I am working on right now is, at this very moment, is the final book in a series of young adult books that I wrote.
Okay.
So that's what I'm doing now. And then after that, I will, once I get that book done, and I'm more than halfway through at this point. Once I get that book done, then I will start the next Lindley novel, which takes place in Cornwall. I did the research for that book in September. There was that brief and heavenly moment between the Delta virus and Omicron, and so you could actually get into England. I mean, you had to be tested and everything, and they had this 2-day test after you got there that you had to take, but otherwise it was pretty fine. Although I did discover that people in London and in Cornwall were not being the least bit careful about, and the Delta variant was really pretty strong then. Anyway, so I did all of that research in September, but I really wanted, it wasn't my intention to immediately start the next Lindley novel. I know who the guilty party is. I know where I'm heading with that. I know what particular issue in Cornwall that I want to explore. It takes place. I've written 2 other books that take place in Cornwall, but this one will, and they're both in 2 different areas, and so this will be in a 3rd area of Cornwall that I haven't really visited yet in a novel.
Cool. That sounds good.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, Jeff, we had a question from Glenna. She wants to know, is there any chance that we're going to see Roland again?
There's a chance, Gwenna, but I don't think it's a real good chance. As I just mentioned, I'm working on another book right now that doesn't involve Roland. And when that's done would be the time to go back to Roland, I think. People seem to be liking the series, and I enjoyed writing that. We'll see. That's kind of a namby-pamby answer, but we'll see. That may happen. I don't know.
Awesome. Okay, so we'll start with Elizabeth for this one. What is something that you've read lately that you loved?
Oh, well, what I am reading right now that I'm really loving is Colson Whitehead's new book, Harlem Shuffle, and talk about sense of place. Oh my goodness, it's really wonderful. It takes place in Harlem, and the first section is 1951, I think, or is it 59? 1959. The next one is in 61, I think. And it's really it's a wonderful book. I mean, he has such a wonderful sense of humor, and he blends that with a wonderful depiction of characters and an amazing ability to create a setting. So I can understand why he has won so many awards. On the back of the book, it's just like this tremendous list of all the awards that he's won, and you certainly see why when I started this one.
Yeah, he's impressive.
You, Jeff?
I said, I was just agreeing. I was saying, yeah, Colson Whitehead's really impressive. I haven't started that one, but I've read some of his other books, and
Mm,
he's awesome. Yeah.
And
yeah.
so Jeff, what's something that you read lately that you loved?
I am just finishing up Something to Hide, Elizabeth's book, and I can't recommend it highly enough. And it's going to be, your fans are going to love it. And if you haven't read Elizabeth, you're going to love it. It's just a really good novel, and hats off to you. I love the empathy that you bring to all of your characters, the good ones and the bad ones. You have a big heart, and you write with a keen eye, and so it's wonderful. I'm just finishing up now also Joan Didion's Where I Was From. When she passed away a couple of weeks ago, she was in the news, every other day, tributes and all. So I reached for my latest unread Joan Didion, and it has to happen to be that. And it's wonderful. It's a kind of a history, sociology memoir of her state, California, her childhood in the North and her adulthood in the South. And California is where I was born and raised, and so Didion's dear to me, the state's dear to me, and no one writes it better, I think. She's sharp as a tack, and it's a book worth reading, especially if you're interested in the American West. It's good stuff. Where I Was From.
And so, Elizabeth, I always ask, since the new book is kind of so far into the series, do you think that people can jump in with Something to Hide, or do you recommend they go back and start with the first book?
No, I think that they can jump in with Something to Hide.
Yeah.
This book actually has all of the characters in it, except for the one who is currently on the Isle of Wight in a recovery program for alcoholism. But other than that, all the characters who've been in the books are in the book. And so I think that makes it easier. You get to know people really, you get to know them through this particular vehicle. I try to write each book as a standalone novel, so that anybody who picks up one of my books at any point in that series will get a full experience, and it'll be clear to them who the characters are.
Perfect. Awesome. So I think that is going to about do it for us tonight. So to recap, for anyone who might have joined us late, we've been chatting with Elizabeth George, whose newest release, Something to Hide, is the newest in the Lindley series. It just came out on Tuesday. And we've been chatting with T. Jefferson Parker, whose newest standalone, 1,000 Steps, also just came out Tuesday. We've got signed book plates to go with both of them. I've dropped links in the comments on both Facebook and YouTube if you guys want to order them from Murder by the Book. If you missed any part of our chat, once we are done, Facebook and YouTube will archive them, so you'll be able to rewatch them. Thank you both for joining us this evening. One of the fun things about virtual events is, the likelihood of us being able to get the two of you into the store at the same time are slim. So it's nice to be able to do this, especially with people like you guys who have known each other for so long, and to be able to kind of get to have these different kinds of conversations. So it's really great to have you both chatting about your new books with us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. This was really fun. Good to see you, Jeff.
Yes, we'll do it again soon.
Y'all take care. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you.